You are now listening to the Fantasy Whisper podcast with your hosts, Johnny Game Time Hicks and Big Travie.
Why, hello, and welcome to the Fantasy Whispers podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Johnny Game Time Hicks, and on the other side of that screen, we got my man, Big Travie. Travis, are you ready for this? Are you ready for our first mock draft of the season?
Yes, sir. If there is one thing that helps you get through that treacherous offseason in fantasy sports, especially in fantasy football, it is mock drafting. I am addicted. You are addicted. We're going to give you, the rest of you mock draft maniacs out there, a little taste of what it's like. And we at the Fantasy Whispers want to break down some strategies and some different things. And we can't always encompass that in the podcast. So this is going to be a nice YouTube series we've started where we break down different styles and strategies of mock drafting.
Absolutely, absolutely. And like we said, we're going to be doing a mock draft. We're going to be putting together this series. We're going to be doing different types of leagues, PPR, standard, drafting from different locations. So today we're doing a standard 12-team mock draft. Travis is going from the number 1 spot, that coveted number 1. And then I'm going from the back end at number 12. So you're going to get a really good aspect of who's going where at this current time in the NFL Summer Dog Days. All right, without further ado, let's jump on in here, Travis. We're doing this mock draft on SleeperBot. They've come out with a new mock draft system. Definitely check it out. These guys are awesome. I definitely recommend them. So does Travis. We both use them for both information and mock drafts. So this is only a YouTube exclusive show. And so you will actually be able to follow along with us. You'll see our picks as they come up. You'll see our thought processes as well. So without further ado, Travis, you ready to join in and get this started?
Yeah, let's do it, brother.
All right, man. Let's go. All right, we're going to do solo here. And let's get this started.
All right, so I'm going to go ahead and select my boy Todd Gurley. I'm taking Todd Gurley for a couple of reasons. Yeah, that was kind of cool, huh?
Yeah.
I'm taking Todd Gurley for a couple of reasons. One, I think the offense runs through him in LA. And I think that they realized that. He was in on 77% of snaps last year, which is a pretty beastly amount. You've heard me say it, and I'll continue to say it, that opportunity is paramount in fantasy football. There's those kind of top-tier guys with Zeke, Le'Veon Bell, and Todd Gurley. And of these guys, I think that Todd Gurley has proven that he can receive on the same wavelength as Le'Veon Bell at times. So I'm going to go ahead and go with Todd Gurley.
I don't know what's going on here. Did you choose him?
Yeah. It's working through. Now you're up.
All right. And I'm just waiting for... There we go. It's my pick here. So we got Todd Gurley, Ezekiel Elliott, Le'Veon Bell, Antonio Brown, Alvin Kamara, David Johnson. Alvin Kamara went before David Johnson, which I think is a little absurd. Leonard Fournette, DeAndre Hopkins, Saquon Barkley, Kareem Hunt, Melvin Gordon. So I'm staring at the best possible player right now on my board, which I do have in my top tier of wide receivers, and that's Odell Beckham. I was really hoping that maybe Melvin Gordon would fall to me at this spot, but I have to go with Odell Beckham. I got to stay true to my draft board here, and I don't have any other elite running backs that are in that same kind of potential as Odell Beckham. So I'm going to go ahead and draft Odell Beckham here. And then I'll get this quick turnaround. And, I've got Dalvin Cook. I'm going to definitely try, since I went wide receiver with my first pick, I think I have to get a running back as quickly as they come off the board. I'm looking at Dalvin Cook, Devonta Freeman, or LaShawn McCoy are my top 3 choices here. And for me, I'm looking at upside because that's what I'm going to need with this pick. I think Odell Beckham gives me a solid floor as production. So I'm going to go Dalvin Cook. I know he's coming off of an injury here, but I think that in that offense, I think that he will be very, very solid.
I like both those picks. I think OBJ gives you the upside you want. They're both coming off injuries, so don't get me wrong. There is some risk with both these guys, but I think I really like what you did there. You covered both of the key positional spots. You got a chance at an elite in OBJ, and you also kind of got an outside chance at an elite in Dalvin Cook. I mean, a lot of things got to break his way, but he was putting up some really good numbers before he came down with that injury. So it's now turned around to me. I'm a big fan of trying to get, when you're in these spots where you have the turns, so 1 and 12, I'm a big fan of trying to get 3 elites. And so for me right here, I'm going to turn around and do just that. I've got Todd Gurley. Also available here for me is Rob Gronkowski. So I'm going to take Rob Gronkowski, and then I'm going to turn around and take Aaron Rodgers. And so my thinking here is that I've covered three of the main positions in your starting lineup with guys that should return value as top of their tier or top of their position. Obviously, if they don't, you're in a little bit of trouble. But I've really kind of put a 3-headed monster together here at this turn. And so I can then kind of stack lottery picks in the back end of my draft. So we'll just see how that plays out. But like I said, I wanted to go with the for sure thing, if you will, if you can call anything in fantasy a for sure thing.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that this is actually a really good point to make right now is we're mock drafting. This is exactly what you do. You test out options of what you might have, and then you see how it works at the end. It's not real, so you can really build your game plan for your actual draft by checking it out. And then, like I said, at the end of the season or at the end of this mock draft, you can look back and say, I actually don't like how my team turned out based on me choosing Aaron Rodgers there. I would rather have this or whatever. This is why we mock draft, for this exact reason. You can try things out. You can see how it works. If you don't like it, don't go with that strategy. If you like it, go with that strategy. So,
right, and Johnny hit it there. You know, if you guys continue to watch our show, you continue to do your own personal mock drafts, you're going to start to get a feel for those times when you're stuck in between a couple guys in the 3rd and 4th round and you don't know who to pick. Well, you've mocked a few times now, and now you do kind of have that feel for it. You're not coming into decisions as scared as you would if you had not been drafting.
Yep, absolutely. I completely agree.
What are you thinking here, Johnny?
So I'm looking at the board. Joe Mixon, Derrick Henry, Tyreek Hill, Jerick McKinnon, Deshaun Watson, Adam Thielen, Doug Baldwin, Jay Ajayi, T.Y. Hilton, then Travis Kelce all came off the board. Again, I'm looking here for – I've got the upside guy in Dalvin Cook. I think that he has the potential to be an RB1. So I'm trying to get us to really solidify that second RB spot, maybe get a high upside guy because I have Odell Beckham at wide receiver. Everything coming out of camp so far, and I know that it's just OTAs and everything like that, but Amari Cooper has been projected to have the entire offense run through him. You know, based on what we've seen, that he can do it. Other than last year, he had a really, really down year. And so I think that upside of maybe returning me that wide receiver 1 option, I do like that. So I'm going to go ahead and take Amari Cooper here with this 3rd pick. And then, again, same kind of logical thinking. I want to get a guy who, but opposite, Dalvin Cook can give me that high upside. So I want to get a guy who's a little bit more consistent. And with this next, it can be a definite RB2. And I know that he's going to be an RB2. And that's going to be Lamar Miller. I'm going to take Lamar Miller here. He's super solid, as much flack as he gets from, the fantasy community. He's not ever finished in the last 3 years outside of that RB2 range. So,
yeah, I dig the Lamar Miller pick, especially after taking the Cooper pick. You wanted to hedge your bet there with a little bit of safety. How are you feeling about Stephon Diggs? You did not take Stephon Diggs there instead of Amari Cooper. I want to hear a little bit about your reasoning there.
So with that pick, essentially it came to I liked Stephon Diggs, but I do have Amari Cooper ranked above Stephon Diggs in a personal thing, and I just with Adam Thielen there,
Yeah, but you got Jordy Nelson coming to Oakland too.
Right, I understand, but Jordy Nelson is an older wide receiver. We've never seen him play with anybody besides Aaron Rodgers and be successful. So I'm not saying that he's not going to be successful with Derek Carr. I just think that, John Gruden's already come out and said, we're running our offense through Amari Cooper. He's a really good wide receiver. He's had, other than last year was his first year as a down year. Other than that, he's always had over 1,000 receiving yards. And I think that if anything, the Jordy Nelson will help Amari Cooper. So, and like I said, I'm just testing these out. I want to see what my roster will be like if I go with a guy like that, as opposed to Stephon Diggs, where he gets injured often. He's, it's a question, is he the number one wide receiver or is he the number two wide receiver? I think Amari Cooper, no doubtably, is the number one wide receiver in Oakland.
Yeah, and the guy that was even kind of challenging was Crabtree, and he's gone now, so there shouldn't be a reason why Derek Carr would like Jordy more than Amari Cooper. So I dig that. Here's what I'm going to do. I've now done a theme with my draft where I didn't take running back heavy. What you'll hear a lot is to go running back heavy. Well, if you don't, it is then time to switch gears and go running back heavy in your later rounds. So since I only took one running back, I'm going to go back-to-back running back here. Okay. And something a little interesting is I'm going to go back-to-back rookie running back here.
Okay.
Probably not the safest play, but I like Darius Geis to be their guy in Washington, to be their lead down back, to be the guy that punches it in on the goal line, to be their workhorse. So I'm going to draft Darius Geis, and then I'm going to turn around and take Rashad Penny. I think both of these guys have a real good shot to be the workhorses in those offenses. And if just one of them works out, I think I'm in a good spot having Todd Gurley as my main back.
I love the Rashad Penny in the 5th round pick. I personally was considering Rashad Penny over Lamar Miller. The reason I didn't take him there was, again, I needed something more consistent. Not to say that Rashad Penny's not going to be consistent. I think he will be. I had to hedge my bet
before with Lamar Miller. Yeah, exactly. No, I understand that completely.
So
it seems like we've had a little bit of a run. Sorry to interrupt there, Johnny. It seems like we've got a little bit of a run at quarterback. So here's what we were talking about before. Because I went quarterback early, I didn't have a chance to take a guy like Tom Brady or Russell Wilson or Drew Brees down here in the 5th round. So just remember that I'm trying to show you guys here, by taking that quarterback early, I then take myself out of getting one later here. And so I really need Aaron Rodgers to go to the top and be the top guy in order to return the value of taking him at that 3rd pick. But luckily, I'm dealing with a guy named Aaron Rodgers who doesn't have a problem returning value.
Great point. And I like what you said. You're seeing what kind of value you're getting for Aaron Rodgers.
Right.
So, so Tom Brady, like you said, Tom Brady went 1 pick after Rashad Penny, then Larry Fitzgerald, which I think is going to be a great, solid wide receiver this year. You have Jimmy Graham, Russell Wilson, Juju Smith, Carlos Hyde, Greg Olsen, Jarvis Landry, Drew Brees, Golden Tate, and then I am up here. So I'm looking at, again, I like to, based on what my roster is at the current moment, at this point, I'm going to take a little bit of a high upside guy. And, but I still think that his floor is there to give me some kind of return. And I'm just going to filter through. So my thought process right here is possibly taking Sony Michel. Okay. I think that, you went rookie running backs. Rookie running backs are one position that you can honestly say can contribute from day one. And
as long as they have opportunity and a skill set and it matches up, I think you're correct there. And Sony Michel is a guy that loves to catch the football. And or I mean, should say he was the more receiving back in the Georgia offense. And so if you can add that in and be on part of that New England style offense that lives, as we know, in the red zone, I think that's a good pickup.
Yeah, so I'm just going to talk through the three guys that are on my board right now that I'm eyeing are obviously Sony Michel, we just talked about, and then Michael Crabtree in Baltimore. There's been a lot of good things coming out. Joe Flacco came out and said he's the guy. And, Joe Flacco does throw a lot. I do think they'll be down quite a bit. So I am eyeing him here. However, I still have a guy on my board that I have ranked in my third tier of wide receivers, and I think he's going to really solidify my wide receiver role here. So with that being said, I am going to pick the Sony Michel pick here. And
I believe you've met my fitness consigliere, Michel.
That's right. So I'm picking him up. And then I am going to go with a guy who is falling really deep in these drafts. I mean, I'm about to get him in the 6th round. And this guy has proven before that he can return number 1 value wide receiver, and that's Marvin Jones. I have him ranked in my 3rd tier wide receivers, and I think he really solidifies my wide receiver group there. So even if that Amari Cooper pick doesn't pan out like I want it to, I think Marvin Jones will give me enough to really help me out there in my roster.
Okay.
All right. What do you think, Travis? Obviously, you took the back-to-back running backs. Your running back class looks to be really solid right now, and you have done something that I think a lot of people are going to start realizing as they start doing more and more mock drafts, and that's that wide receiver is just so deep. So
yeah, we talk about all the time that quarterbacks are deep. I would almost argue that wide receivers are more deep than quarterbacks. My thinking along those lines is you really can return the value easily on wide receivers a lot more than you can on quarterbacks. And so I might wait on a wide receiver here, except for the fact that I do see a couple guys I'm interested in. I see Will Fuller and Pierre Garçon. Okay, Will Fuller is going to have Deshaun Watson back here. And so because of that, I think that he's going to have a chance to put up some big numbers. But I also like Pierre Garçon as a consistent wide receiver type. So we did talk about being able to wait on wide receiver, but I'm going to take back-to-back wide receiver here because, like I said, I think I have a strength at quarterback and running back and even tight end. I think it's time to shore up wide receiver, and then I can work at some lottery tickets later on. So I'm going to go ahead and take Will Fuller here, and then I'm going to turn around and take Pierre Garçon. And I think now with Jimmy Garoppolo there and Pierre Garçon, who's been a consistent wide receiver fantasy-wise, just a guy that you can count on to get you those points. His floor is there. I'm going to take him, and then Will Fuller is the upside play there.
Yeah, I really like those two guys. Like you said, Pierre Garçon, and we're going to end up talking about him in a couple of episodes on the Fantasy Whispers when we do our wide receiver rankings. Pierre Garçon is actually a really solid guy to have. When you're talking about that production is still there. Yes, I understand he's getting a little bit older, but he's a guy who is super solid at every single thing. I mean, creating separation, catching those winning those one-on-one battles, winning the zone battles.
He's elite at the intermediate. He's elite at the intermediate routes, which is something that Jimmy Garoppolo has excelled at. And so when you're pairing up those guys, like Jimmy Garoppolo is not going to huck it deep down the field, and all the time and have these long bombs. And, Pierre Garçon is not going to be running a bunch of long bomb routes. Not saying he's not capable of it, but that's not the style they want to play. And so they have an offensive line they're trying to work through. They have young running backs they're trying to work through. So what are they going to do? They're going to get the old wily vet in Pierre Garçon to run those intermediate routes, be the safety net for Jimmy Garoppolo. And Garoppolo has been efficient at finding those kind of guys.
100% agree.
So we've had another, speaking of Garoppolo, we've had another run of quarterbacks here in this round, and it looks like it was very popular for tight ends as well. So this is kind of those things we're talking about. If people start seeing a position go off the board, they tend to want to gravitate towards that. And you have to be able to dictate when these types of runs happen in drafts, which side you want to be on. Do you want to join that run because they're going to be gone because one of the guys you like is going off the board? Or can you be patient and can you wait? And can you let these guys all take whatever position you're not going for, and then you soak up these other skill positions? So I think Johnny got in a good spot here because, like we said, look at the board. Look at all these tight ends and quarterbacks that came off. Johnny didn't really miss out on a lot of skill positions from this second half of the turn.
Correct. And I think this is a perfect example of what you look at what other people have drafted, right? So everyone now has taken a quarterback except for me. And when I look at the quarterback rankings sheet, which are up on the screen right now, Ben Roethlisberger, Phillip Rivers, Matt Ryan, Matthew Stafford, Patrick Mahomes, Marcus Mariota, Jameis Winston, all those guys are still available on the board.
Even after all these guys have picked quarterbacks.
Exactly. And now even if teams take two quarterbacks, I'm still in an okay position to say I just listed off 6-7 guys that I'm okay having as my week one starter, knowing that, hey, I'm going to wait a couple more rounds before I draft my guy. And, if it doesn't work out, I'm not afraid to cut ties with him and go with another quarterback that has a better matchup. Whereas I didn't, and I'm just really going to gobble up all of those little tasty fantasy players that have fallen to me now because other people have chosen to, draft Jimmy Garoppolo in the 7th, which tune into our next show. We're going to be talking about our second rounds of quarterbacks. I think that's way too early for Jimmy Garoppolo. I would have rather taken a guy like Andrew Luck instead of Jimmy Garoppolo there.
I was just going to say the Andrew Luck pick there in 7. I don't know if that's going to stick that way. It just depends on if this guy will pick up a quarterback and throw or pick up a football and throw. But I like the value for Andrew Luck in the 7th if that stays that way.
Correct. So
all right. So what are we thinking here, Johnny?
I'm thinking on this one, I'm going to go a rookie running back here, and I'm going to go with Royce Freeman. I think that he has the potential to be a workhorse running back in an offense that seems to be able to move the ball. So I want to take him there. And then you talked about it earlier, just loading up on running backs. I do like the set that I have here at wide receiver. And so with that being said, I am going to go with another guy that I think is going to do wonders. And he is another rookie, but I like his chances, and that's Ronald Jones. I know that might be a little bit of reach, but I don't think that he will be there.
Yeah, I don't think that he's going to stay as low as he's ranked now. As stuff comes out and we find out that this guy's going to be the guy there in Tampa Bay. So I don't mind those picks. So we're coming around, and we've got some guys here that could be bell cows as far as running backs are concerned, right? So if we're looking at Isaiah Crowell, you can kind of think that he would be their guy. And another guy I like down here is Kerryon Johnson. Okay, both of these guys are supposedly going to be the guys in those offenses. But we're getting to a point in the draft where I already have kind of the man in the offenses for running back. So I'm going to take some guys that are going to be more of a receiving or specialty backs in their offenses, because these guys not only ideally in an ideal world, I wouldn't be starting these guys. They'd be bye-week fillers or, guys if I get in a pinch. But I'm going to go ahead and draft Rex Burkhead.
Okay, I love that pick.
I'm going to draft Chris Thompson. So I know what you're thinking. I already have Darius Geis. He's not exactly a handcuff, right? But he is a guy that is going to be paired up with Alex Smith. And Alex Smith loves to work running backs in. He just loves to dump off, and that's his style of play. So I think that there's value in both of these picks, and not just as guys on my roster, but as pieces I can pair with other guys to to trade. And as Johnny knows, the draft is just where you start. And so you need to be building with an eye on the future as well as what can I have that's going to have value for other people later on that I can offer up and try to make my team even more dangerous down the stretch. So I think the Rex Burkhead pick, he's got a role in that offense. New England loves him, and Chris Thompson is some of the same for that, especially for guys that are hopefully going to be on my bench most of the year.
Hopefully. I think that both of those picks are really good back-to-back picks. Again, they have that upside. We've seen it before. But the thing is, you're not relying on that in order to create your fantasy roster. So right after you went Jacksonville Jaguars defense, which in the 9th round, I understand people that Jacksonville had the number 1 defense last year. They averaged like 15 points a game. But that is just to draft a defense early to me when you still have guys on the board like Randall Cobb, you have Robbie Anderson, you have, all these other guys. Those are just wide receivers that I just pointed out. And then you want to come over to the running back position, and you've got a couple more where I can't justify taking a defense that early. And considering that there's so many factors that go into an entire defense, right? We've seen it time and time again. Everyone drafts the Houston Texans defense because of J.J. Watt so early, and then he ends up getting injured, and then that defense turns to crap. So when you're looking at some of these defenses,
I think the lucky thing with Jacksonville is they have youth, and so they should continue to be a great defense. But I get what you're saying. Like, they had a monstrous year last year, scoring a ton of touchdowns as well. Like, are they up for regression? Yes. And do you want to be taking a defense in the 9th round when, you've got guys like Isaiah Crowell? Like, so, that second position took Jacksonville instead of Isaiah Crowell, who's probably going to be the starter for the Jets and their goal line guy, who's been a consistent runner. Like, why wouldn't you want to just take another running back? You can never have too many over a defense. So Johnny makes a good point. It's way too early to be taking defense here, but it still happens. I mean, we're in drafts, for the last 10 years where this stuff still happens to this day.
Yeah, correct. So again, though, I actually do like when people do that because, once again, like we talked in the round before, and when people draft quarterbacks really early, it makes other positions fall to me, and then that's where I take advantage, and I just simply select the best player available, and I build my roster that way. Yeah. So here I am going to I've drafted a handful of running backs that all have really high upside, and my wide receivers are pretty solid. Most people have tight ends off the board. I'll probably wait a little bit longer on that because right now I'm just going to be throwing a dartboard on that, and then so I'm just going to wait on that a little bit. And so a guy that I'm really eyeing right here, and this guy's going super late, and I do expect his volume or his ADP to rise over the next few months. But Randall Cobb, this guy is with Aaron Rodgers, the most potent offense in the entire football league, and he's going to be in the slot. They got rid of Jordy Nelson. Those targets, where are they going to go? Some will go to Jimmy Graham, of course. Some will go to Randall Cobb. He'll get a more target share, I believe. And I think that being drafted in the 9th round is a little too low, but I will definitely take him here. And again, like you had said with your Rex Burkhead and Chris Thompson pick, I don't need him to necessarily play for me every week, but if his upside is there, which is exactly what you want, I like him right here.
Yeah, and if somebody gets injured, God forbid, at the top of your lineup, he's not a bad guy to slot in as a filler while that guy works through injury. So it's like you get all these, when you're not taking defense and quarterback and tight end in these later rounds and you're really focusing on skill players, you get the benefit of stacking up players that will bring you back more points to your roster than a defense or a tight end or a quarterback.
Absolutely. And then it's in the 10th round here. I'm going to go ahead and get the guy that I want, who I actually have ranked pretty high. We just talked about our QB1 rankings, and then I've actually raised him a little bit since then, and that's Matthew Stafford. I will gladly take him in the 10th round. Give me that, 4,000 yards, 25 or so touchdowns with the upside of being able to get to the 30. Also, give me the double dip with Marvin Jones.
I like that. A couple guys just came off the board that I'm a little upset. Kerryon Johnson, I kind of talked about him last round. I wanted to grab him a couple spots before me. That's fine. And then also Sterling Shepard was another guy I was eyeballing there.
Man, if you could have had Sterling Shepard follow to you, that's another guy that news just broke yesterday about how he's been lining up on the outside.
Yeah.
So not only does he have the ability to run that slot position,
yeah, he's an all-tools kind of wide receiver. I mean, he can do anything. And so if that offense can get it going again like they had done before, which with Pat Shurmur there, they're going to get creative. So I'm upset that he didn't fall to me. That's all right. I am going to take wide receiver here. Another guy that once again, volume, opportunity, I'm going to take Allen Hurns here. I just think that he's a good guy to take. He's probably going to be the number one there in Dallas. And he's a nice, safe floor. And I haven't taken a ton of wide receivers. And once again, we're talking about how deep they are. This is a guy that can be very usable for you. And you're getting him in the 10th round. So I like him. Absolutely. And then I'm going to turn around.
Do you, from a player aspect, what do you let fantasy, people who are reading into this, what do you think? Do you think there's a big drop off between Allen Hurns and Dez Bryant?
Actually, if you take a look at where the two were rated by Pro Football Focus last year, Allen Hurns was rated better than Dez Bryant last year. And so that's an interesting thing to take, because basically what you're saying is by losing Dez Bryant and even Jason Witten, you could be gaining by grabbing Allen Hurns. So what I mean is that Dak Prescott lost Jason Witten and he lost Dez Bryant, but he could actually be better off because they brought in Allen Hurns because he was graded better than both those guys and can gobble up those targets. So we're looking at about 100 total targets combined that are available now. And I love Allen Hurns. He's a great possession wide receiver. He's a great guy that he's one of those tooly wide receivers. He can do a lot of things. And so I think that, I'm really excited about Allen Hurns in Dallas. I think the volume's there, the run game's there, the play action pass is there. And if Dak can get on the same page with him, which I don't have any doubt there will be, I think he'll be a useful wide receiver to own.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think that a lot of people are going to look at Allen Hurns and then you see the big name value of Dez and be like, oh my gosh, what are they going to do? But like you said, yeah, Pro Football Focus. And then even when you look at, his breakdowns, they are so similar between Dez and Hurns as far as man-to-man coverage, getting separation, catching contested catches. They are very, very similar. I'm talking a few percentage points, and ideally their routes ran and their route trees are very, very similar. So I don't think it's a coincidence that they brought in Allen Hurns. We're fantasy analytics people, and there's people who actually get paid millions and millions of dollars to look at this stuff. And so I don't think it's a coincidence at all. And I think that's a great pick for you right there.
So I'm going to turn around and look at running back here. But as I look down here, I see Doug Martin, a handcuff, so to speak, or a guy splitting time with Marshawn Lynch, likely. I do like Doug Martin. I like his skill. I like him in an offense with Gruden. But I'm just kind of looking at all these guys. C.J. Anderson, another guy that I'm looking at. That's also kind of a splitting time in Carolina. Corey Clement. There's so many running backs in that backfield. So if I'm going to look at guys that could be handcuffs or could be sharing time, I'm going to look at a guy that is my handcuff, so to speak, and that's Chris Carson. I'm going to take Chris Carson here to shore up that Seattle.
That's a boy.
I do love Chris Carson. I was bummed to see him get injured. Just how much Seattle loved him. All the players loved playing with him. He ran hard. He never really got to show what he could do. But I'm going to take him because I already have Rashad Penny. And so I'm going to shore up that Seattle backfield by taking these two and make sure that I have the guy. And they have made it very apparent that they want some more run game like they did when they had Marshawn Lynch. So I think they're going to commit to doing that and taking some of the burden off of Russell Wilson. So that's just, shore up that backfield and make sure that I not only have an elite in Todd Gurley, but I have another backfield on an offense that could be pretty good in Seattle.
I think that's a great hedge of your bet there. And especially looking at what is on the board, there's not much to necessarily take a stab at there. So hedging your bet right there is pretty good to me. So right after you, Derek Carr, LA Chargers defense, Nelson Aguilar, which that's a pretty good pick right there. I do like that one. Houston Texans defense, Doug Martin, which you were just talking about, came a few picks after you. Denver's defense, Calvin Ridley, CJ Anderson, Devontae Booker, Patrick Mahomes, and then I am up here. And you know what? Similar to what you were just talking about with your Chris Carson pick. When I'm looking at the board, I got my quarterback. I'm feeling solid there. Wide receiver, I'm going to address that in just 1 second. But I'm going to do something similar to you in the fact that I'm going to solidify my Ronald Jones, the second pick, and I'm going to go ahead and take Peyton Barber. We've seen this guy produce last year, and this kind of, like I said, it locks up that spot. Typically in a draft, I might not do this, but in this case, because it's so early before training camp and all of that and what we've seen, they are going to give Ronald Jones a shot at getting that starting position. I do expect him to take it, but being so early in the season, I'm going to say Peyton Barber. I'm just going to grab him here and say, all right, well, if he ends up running with the job, I also have him. And then I'm going to turn around with this wide receiver or with this next pick, and I'm going to get another receiver and just another dart throw here. And Marquise Lee, this guy's been very solid over the last couple of years quietly. We've talked about before how Allen Hurns has left. He went to Dallas. You also have AR-15, Allen Robinson, going over to Chicago. So that number one role is open, and Marquise Lee actually quietly was the number one wide receiver when you look at the numbers last year for Jacksonville. So you're not going to really convince me that, D.D. Westbrook is going to be in the number one. He's not big enough for me. I think he's more of a slot player. And then you're going to say, I know that they signed Dante Moncrief over there, but that he's never really been a wide receiver one. He is more of a wide receiver two type of player. So give me Marquise Lee, give me the targets, give me that number one wide receiver. And, again, if he pops off and he's solid like he has been, then I just picked up a solid wide receiver in the 12th round.
I agree. I like Marquise Lee. I was even looking at him back with Allen Hurns. I think that there's a potential for both of those guys to finish around the same spot. And so if you look at what Johnny did, he was able to get a skill position that shored up a backfield for himself and a quarterback in the same amount of time that he took Marquise Lee, where I took, an Allen Hurns before that. So it's just kind of a flip-flop thing. And it just goes to show you once again how deep wide receiver is, that there's still guys available there to him that can return some of that same value as a couple rounds prior. I'm in the mode now as we get late and we've only got a few rounds left in this thing of dart throws or lottery tickets or guys that you want to stash that could potentially take over backfields. And so for me, I'm going to go to Baltimore. All the talk's been talked about Alex Collins and how it was his backfield. But if you remember, Alex Collins was kind of an emergency break the glass and bust this guy out and try and hope that he can carry a backfield. And they have had for a couple of years Kenneth Dixon. They've been trying to work him in here, and I don't think people should sleep on him. If he is healthy, I think he has every shot to take over this backfield. He's a good hard runner, and I'm going to go ahead and take him here deep in the 12th.
I love that pick there. I think that you, again, high upside guy, like you hit it. The thing is with Alex Collins, they're not paying him much. And they're not paying Kenneth Dixon that much. This is going to be his last year to say, you know what, Kenneth, you need to either prove it or else you're not going to be in the NFL anymore. I've watched a lot of this guy's tape in college. He was elusive. He was electric. He has that big playability, and he actually is pretty solid in the few games that he's played. I know he's not a big sample size, but that upside is definitely there. And so if you're telling me that you're going to get that upside in the 12th round, you really have nothing to lose in that. If worst case scenario, you need to be able to drop a couple of guys after the draft, and he makes a perfect case for that. So you're not afraid to cut ties with him. You didn't sever a huge draft pick to get him. And so I really do like where your thought process was. I was considering him instead of Peyton Barber, but I like your pick.
Yeah, and so with my last one, my last skill position pick, because the next two pick I'm going to go kicker and defense. I am torn here. I am, of course, also a Packers fan in addition to being the Rams fan, and I wanted Ty Montgomery here because if you just think about where Ty Montgomery was last year, so many rounds before, you just like scream the value he has because he's that converted wide receiver type. The NFL is leaning that way, but there's just so many mouths to feed, and now there's so many running backs in that Green Bay backfield. I'm going to shy away from Ty Montgomery here and go with some logic. And I'm going to go with Nyheim Hines. It's a guy I know that you like, Johnny.
I love him.
Yeah, it's your sleeper as far as rookie running backs of this year. He is a guy that some people are comping to Alvin Kamara. He's not as big as Alvin Kamara, but some of the skill sets he has in the passing game or as a receiver are there. And so the comparisons are, semi-valid there. But either way, like, who is there as far as talent-wise in Indy anymore? You got Frank Gore going off to Miami. Like, as far as I know, like, I don't know how that guy's not in a nursing home yet. But either way, Nyheim Hines is the guy I'm going to take here. I just think the upside is there. He could take over that backfield. And, it's not like I'm going to be like, they're like, oh, another running back, Travis here. I'm like, yeah, you can't get enough of these guys. If you're worried about being thin at wide receiver, once again, waiver wire can help you with wide receiver. Like, it is such a deep field. So stack these lottery tickets. If you can hold on to them for a few weeks and survive, you could be looking at something that either you can trade away for a lot of value or you can, trade some other pieces out to help your wide receiver situation. Running back is a commodity. It always has been and it always will be because of the attrition at the position and the lack of depth.
100% agree. As and we can kind of touch on this as far as after we're done drafting here and all the skill positions, and we would just click on the running back position and click on the wide receiver position. When you click on the running back position, you're going to see third tier guys or third string guys. You click on the wide receiver, you're still going to have a couple of number one wide receivers out there. You're going to have a couple of options as far as either, like a Mohamed Sanu is still on the board. He's going to be a solid guy to pick up. And chances are he's not going to get drafted. Now, I'm not saying he's going to be, a world beater or anything like that, but it just goes to show that the depth of wide receiver is way more significant.
And there's still the exciting ones that are down here. I mean, you look at, John Brown in Baltimore is a little exciting. You've got Corey Coleman in Cleveland, also exciting.
Danny Amendola, there's been a lot of, there's always a ton of hype in Miami, always.
Mike
every
Wallace
year,
for
but
Philadelphia.
Yeah, exactly. So you got Tyler Lockett in Seattle. That's another guy that I think could potentially be a sleeper pick this year. So again, I don't think that what you are doing there is crazy at all. I actually, that's a strategy that, as you know, I like to implement. And you just want to you never have too many running backs. Like that's
especially
that's like
if you look. Yeah,
it's like saying I have too much money. Like it's
exactly.
not.
It's a much wanted and sought after commodity for sure.
Okay, so right after you, we saw kind of a run at wide receivers again here. We had Deshaun Jackson. Dak Prescott came off the board again. Dak Prescott coming
in the 13th
round. This guy has not finished a season outside of the top 12 at the position. So again, it just goes to show how deep quarterbacks are. And then you have Rashad Matthews, Terrell Pryor, Mike Williams. You have your first kicker in Gostkowski, second kicker in Gostkowski. Greg Zuerlein went around before. New Orleans Saints, O.J. Howard, Giovanni, Justin Tucker, and I am up. And since I do not have a tight end yet, I should probably grab one. And I'm going to go ahead and go with George Kittle. You've seen this guy. He will be a sleeper this year. Well, you heard it here first. He's one of our whispers. But George Kittle, you like what he did. He showed a lot of upside with his new fancy quarterback in Jimmy Garoppolo. Quarterbacks usually like to go to their tight ends often when they're looking at a new offense, as well as you look at that offensive system, and there's a lot of potential there for catches in a carved out good situation.
I mean, yeah, and you go like beyond Pierre Garçon, who I drafted earlier in this draft, and there's not a lot of talent there on that offense. And
correct,
it doesn't stop Shanahan from utilizing the weapons he does have. And so I do like the Kittle pickup as somebody that Garoppolo could gravitate to.
Yep. And like I said, yeah, I like that one. That's very, very good. All right, and then let's see. I'm gonna go ahead and grab my defense. I'm not gonna throw or think about this too much, but I like the upside of the Baltimore Ravens. We saw them last year dominate for a while, a few week stretch. So, and they do get some guys back. Baltimore Ravens is the defense I'm going to go with here.
I can dig it. So it's coming around to me, and I'm just looking at defense and kicker here as my last two picks. And I'm seeing a few defenses I like. Chicago is a nice young and upcoming defense. I just don't know that they are going to be a good enough offense to kind of hedge the bet of a young defense. I do like Pittsburgh. Once again, I think you can stream defense, so I don't think it'll be a big deal who I pick here. So I am going to go with Pittsburgh. They score a ton of points. Their defense is young and up and coming, and they should have some good games. They also open the year with Cleveland, Chicago, and Baltimore in their first 4 games. So I like those as my first few matchups. And then
sorry, I don't want to. I just want to throw that. I think what you just did was a perfect example of what people should think through. Think short term when you're thinking defenses. Don't think the whole entire season.
Unless you're taking a defense early, which we advise against, of course. But if you're taking a defense in the back end of these drafts, what are they going to? At least their first week. Know their first week, because after that you can stream.
100%
so opening with Cleveland, who yes, it's a new revamped offense, but it's still Cleveland, who Pittsburgh has owned, and I just think that's a pretty good pick. It's something that you could go with.
Yep, I agree, 100%.
If we're talking about kickers here, I am going to turn around and go with Kai Forbath. I think a improved offense with a running game back and a better quarterback, he should be a good guy to lean on. They're going to have a defense, and that'll give them the ball back, and they should score quite a bit this year. So I'm going to take Kai Forbath, and that will conclude my team.
All right. You got a couple of extra picks coming off here, and then I've got my last one. I just need to fill it with a kicker. So you've got a guy like Dan Bailey still on there. He always kicks very, very accurate. So I'm just going to go with that. I think they'll be able to move the ball pretty relatively well. And if anything, I think that they might have a little bit of difficulty scoring touchdowns once they get into the red zone. So, which is what you always want to key in when you're looking at a kicker. So give me Dan Bailey. If he's not good, I drop him. No big deal. All right. So that concludes our entire mock draft here. We're going to run over just tell you again who we drafted. I'll start off. I went first round. I went Odell Beckham, then Dalvin Cook, Amari Cooper, Lamar Miller, Sony Michel, Marvin Jones, Royce Freeman, Ronald Jones Jr., Randall Cobb. My quarterback is Matthew Stafford. And then I went Peyton Barber to shore up the backfield, and then Marquise Lee, George Kittle, Baltimore Ravens defense, and Dan Bailey as my final pick. Travis, you want to go over what yours?
Yeah. I was just going to say, I like what you did there at the top, and I like the way you filled it out at the bottom. So I think that's a good strategy. If you're going to go skill possessions early, just know that you can get guys like Matt Stafford and George Kittle, who are huge values at the back end. Mm-hmm. I went with Todd Gurley, number 1 overall, then Rob Gronkowski, Aaron Rodgers, Darius Geis, and Rashad Penny. I followed it up with Will Fuller and Pierre Garçon back-to-back. Then Rex Burkhead and Chris Thompson, Alan Hearns, Chris Carson, Kenneth Dixon, Nyheim Hines, and then the Pittsburgh Steelers and Kai Forbath. And so, like we were just kind of talking, I did not go skill position heavy. I went with a for sure elite in Todd Gurley, also Rob Gronkowski and Aaron Rodgers. But I feel like I was able to make up for that in the back end by picking up a lot of skill position guys and a lot of lottery tickets, if you will, that could pan out.
Yep, I completely agree. I like what you did.
A little bit of contrasting styles there for you guys. Johnny went skill position heavy first, or wide receiver running back heavy, and I went for elites at the position first and then worked my way back into those skill positions. I think both of our teams could compete if everything went well, and we would have teams that are formidable with each other. And it's just about preference, but about knowing that if you take one position, where you're going to be at and where the value is going to be at later in the draft.
Yep. All right. So that concludes our first mock draft. Again, thank you so much for watching. And if you haven't, please go and like our Facebook page and subscribe on YouTube, which this will be only a YouTube thing for Mock Draft Mondays, as well as get our latest podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, or Google Play. Just search the Fantasy Whisperers podcast or go to thefantasywhisperers.com. Until next time, I'm Johnny Game Time Hicks, and that's Big Travie. Catch us on Tuesday with our next live show. We're out.
Peace.
Peace.
Thank you for listening to the Fantasy Whisperers podcast. You can hear more from John and Travis on Google Play, SoundCloud, and iTunes. You can also follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at TF Whisperers.